Have you ever experienced a God wink? You know, the kind of experience you know without a shadow of a doubt that God stepped in and gave you a big old wink from heaven. I'm your host, Cyndee Sparre, broadcasting from Office Evolution in Troy, Michigan. I am a firm believer that there is power in sharing God wink stories. Think of it as a way for people to shine their light on Jesus, one wink at a time. In Matthew 5:14, it says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Welcome back, God Wink listeners. My name is Cyndee Sparre, your host of the God Wink podcast. And I'm nervous, all right? I'm just going to lay it all out there. I am a little bit nervous. I've not done that many podcasts solo. As you know, oftentimes I have someone as a guest on the podcast, and I just felt so called to share with you just some amazing God winks that I've personally experienced over these past few months here. So here it goes, nothing. So to kind of start things out, bring things in, I know those of you that follow us and listen on a regular basis, you have probably heard these past handful of episodes have been focused in on those with addiction. Different types of addiction, right? It stems in all kinds of different areas. And lo and behold, I was actually taking in so many notes from our guests that we had on the podcast. And if you haven't listened to it, I highly encourage you to. There were different aspects, whether it might be drug, alcohol, many, many different areas of addiction. It could be addicted to your career. But I personally was going through some transitions with addiction within my family. And I didn't know, obviously God didn't show me all the pieces to the puzzle until latter recently. But man, can you guys just relate how good it is when God does things? And no, it's not fun when you really don't know what he's doing and how it's going to pan out. But man, when you look back and he shows you everything intricately woven together, is God not a good God, a great God? The first thing I want to kind of take us back to, and I'm going to timeline this as best as I can. Back January 28th, it was the polar vortex that we were experiencing across the country, where even down south it was freezing cold. And my entrepreneur mind, as well as my husband's really good about buying and selling things, flipping them and making money. And we always, sometimes we have these conversations of, I wonder if you make good money doing this. And I knew that he had ordered things in the past from overseas. And I said, you should try ordering this Ember mug. It's a temperature controlled mug. And myself, my coffee always goes cold. I've got to go warm it up in the microwave. Or I have a little, what do they call them? Like coasters that are supposed to keep it warm. And I'm like, those don't do good enough. Like, we need to sell a mug like an Ember mug. And so he's like, oh, I found it overseas. And he shows me the picture of the mug. And I was like, ew, like, I don't like the color of that mug. That's a weird color. Don't they have a black or whatever? I know I'm going down a rabbit trail, but I'm going to bring this around. So he's like, no, it's the only color they offer. Let's just order it, see if you like it. And then you can, if you like it, promote it and we can order more. So he orders this mug. Okay. Now, fast forward. gosh, it had to be between then, maybe just a few days up to like February 2nd. I get this package on my porch, and it's that ugly color, temperature controlled mug, and 2 travel tags that say "Let's Travel" on them. And I'm like, well, this is weird. I'm like, first off, did you ever order travel tags, Spencer Sparre? Because that wasn't part of it. And it came from Walmart. And I'm like, well, Walmart does do a lot of partnerships with overseas. So I'm thinking maybe that was it. So I asked my husband, I said, did that mug ship already? Because how's it even possible to get it within a couple days? And he goes, no, it hasn't even shipped yet. Look, I'm looking right at the order, and it hasn't even went out yet from China. So I was like, this is weird. I'm like, why? What are the odds of me getting a package? Maybe it's a neighbor's. So, of course, there's no like name besides J. Keith is what it said on it. And I thought, well, maybe it's their first name's initial. So there's a Jeremy across the street. There's a Jeff across the street. So I just start going to my neighbors. I'm like, I got a package here, and it's probably one of yours. And all of them were like, no, we didn't order that. So then I'm like, Lord, do you seriously grant? Because I really wanted this temperature-controlled mug. And I was like, do you grant the littlest of things like that? Like, little wink, wink. I got you a present, my child. And so I told my good friends about it, Audrey and Cora, and they were like, well, what are the travel tags all about then? I'm like, nothing. What do you mean? And they're like, well, God doesn't waste anything. My friend Cora's like, have you prayed into those travel tags? I'm like, no, that just sounds hocus pocus. Are you, I didn't really think much of it. I just thought more of, wow, God got, like, literally blessed me with a mug, the exact mug that got ordered. So anyways, of course, my husband ends up canceling his order. And I pray into, I was obedient. So Cora gave me some brownie points there. I was obedient and into what Cora was recommending to just pray into it. And I'm like, Lord, if this is you with the travel tags, what are you trying to show me? What are you telling me? And so, I kid you not, it was like, I don't know, like a day later, maybe 2 at the most, I get an email from Washington, D.C., and it's a private invitation only, saying we would like to invite you to Washington, D.C. the first week of May for Unite the Uniters. And first thing in my head, I'm not even thinking about the travel tags, let's just be honest. I was just like, this is weird. This is spam for sure. Because who am I? It reminds me of the Brandon Lake song. Who am I? Good song, by the way. If you've not listened to Brandon Lake and Jonas Brothers, it is a very good song. So I'm like, who am I to get invited to something like this? And it even said only 100 people were selected. I'm like, what? This is a spam. And they're like, book your flight. I'm like, you're crazy. And so I'm like, well, but what if it is real? And so Cora and Audrey were like, well, email him back and ask him to give you more details so you can be reassured that this is not some fake put together thing. And so I emailed back. I'm like, could you just reaffirm what's happening? I just want to make sure this isn't fake invitation type of thing. And I'm not one to travel much because I don't have the money to do it, if I'm being honest. And so I email them, and I didn't hear anything back. And by the way, it was like I don't know if it was United in Purpose that it was coming. No, it wasn't United in Purpose. I think it was like part of Paula White's team. That's what it said in the email. And I'm like, isn't that Trump's pastor? Like, what is going on here? I'm just a little guy. But this email was exactly what the Lord had been speaking to me 3 years ago. And that he's building an army and he's uniting uniters. And so I just thought, is this really happening? Is what he spoke into me years ago coming to pass? And so I believe like 2 weeks went by and I didn't hear anything back from the team in Washington, D.C. And I'm like, yeah, what a bummer. It was probably fake. It wasn't real. And I get an email from a gentleman that had visited my organization, known as My Christian Business Network. He went on the website, and we have a spot where we offer prayer requests to be submitted. And so I get an email saying that someone submitted a prayer request, and the gentleman actually ends up emailing us through our info at mychristianbusinessnetwork.com. And he said, thank you so much for an opportunity to submit my prayer request on your website. How can I be praying for you? And I was like, oh, wow. It's been 4 years of having that prayer request on our platform. And this is the first time someone's reached out and asked, how can I be praying for you? On the flip side. And so immediately, top of mind, it was Washington, D.C. I said, I'm waiting for a response about attending an event in Washington, D.C. And I haven't heard back. And it's been a couple weeks. So I type this out, okay? And I click send. The minute I click send, I get a notification that you have mail. Who do you think I was getting mail from? Washington, D.C. And I'm like, what in the world? Right? Sometimes I wonder if that person that emailed me was an angel. I always can't help but wonder if it was an angel in action, right? That was just prompting me to, I don't know, or he uses people. That's another thing, is I've seen how the Lord uses other people to answer prayer, so that it's a testimony for them as well, that there's power in prayer. But anyways, I know I'm going off trail a little bit. So I email the woman back, and I was like, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and get my travel, hotel, and everything in order. And I realize through all of this, going back, let's go back to the I'm traveling now, but I have 2 travel tags, so I don't know who's coming with me. I have a temperature-controlled mug, which actually ended up being a key piece in my own health. I'm going to give a little shout-out right now to a program that I did. It was a sugar detox that I did through Christine Trimp's program. And through that program, I detoxed from coffee. I know, crazy. It was crazy, because coffee is it's like oxygen to me. I had such a really, really serious addiction to coffee. And the Ember mug ended up being what I used, and I did tea. And I kid you not, you guys, I lost like 40 pounds doing this sugar detox and doing tea instead of coffee. And that was decaffeinated tea. And I wasn't even tired. I'm sorry, I'm going off again. Anyways, I'm thinking the Lord's just, he starts just peeling these layers of the onion of, do you see that when your health was in order, Cyndee, it was like you were well connected to me on the vine, right? You're the branch, I'm the vine. You're hearing from me. I'm speaking into you. I'm guiding you. You're reading the word every day. You're praying. Like, everything was in tune when my health started to come into tune. And I'm like, he knew it. He knew that the mug that wasn't from China, but a blessing out of nowhere from the Lord, was going to change my health habits, which was going to change my habits that I had with the Lord, which then God's like, I need you to have your health in order for what is coming down the line. So next thing that ends up happening after, I do the sugar detox, still using that Ember type mug, it was May 4th through 6th, which was when they were gathering 100 of us across the country who we were they specifically did research on who's gathering Christians in business in the marketplace. We want them to unite, hence Unite the Uniters, so that we can have an impact across the country so that they know what one another's doing, and we can build a kingdom economy, pretty much is how the best way to describe it. And so I'd packed my bags, and just before I was supposed to leave on the 4th, some things had transpired where God was really urging me to do an intervention with my husband. And I have to tell you guys, it was the best decision to be obedient to the Lord in it that I ever could have dreamed of. So about the addiction series side. So I was going through my husband was dealing with addiction at the time. And so I had resources. I had Grace Centers of Hope. I had Celebrate Recovery, just some wonderful organizations that were supporting me through it. But mind you, at the same time, and I always feel this way, that when the Lord is about to do something big, the enemy starts working on other areas. And one area in particular it was my family. It was my own husband. And so I had to do the hardest thing ever, and I sought help. A good friend, Carol Ward, had also linked me in with an organization that provided consultations on how to do an intervention. And I'm like, Lord, you're asking me to do an intervention and ask my husband to leave our home. And at the same time, I'm being invited to the most amazing opportunity I could have ever asked for. And how am I going to do this? I'm a mom, I got to be here for my kids. And my husband, through it, he was so gracious as we talked about and did the intervention. He said, yeah, I need help. And so he agreed to go to an out-of-state rehab facility where God restored him spiritually and everything. It's phenomenal transformation, but it's so hard though. It's not an easy thing to say yes to what the Lord calls you to do, because you don't know how the other side's going to receive you. And you think, I need to stop everything. I need to not go to Unite the Uniters. I need to be here for my kids. But my husband, he said, Cyndee, we know God called you to go, and you got to go to Washington, D.C. Don't cancel it just because of this. And so I called my mom, and without even a blink of a question, she said, yep, when do I need to book my flight? I'll fly in from Alabama, and I'll stay with the kids. And so I'm so thankful to have such supportive parents through this. And so all of this is happening, and I'm still asking myself, Lord, who's coming with me to Washington, right? My husband actually ends up leaving. I want to say it was maybe a few days before I was supposed to leave to Washington, D.C., and he was supposed to be the one that went with me. So, think of where I'm at thinking, well, who's the other person? You wouldn't take me this far with these luggage tags and a mug for there not to be another person. And so I go to Washington, D.C. I drive there, long drive, and nervous. I'm usually not a nervous person, but I've never been to Washington, D.C. I didn't know what it would be like. I didn't have any friends meeting me there, and so it was a little weird. I'm a people person. I'm used to going with the group or something. And so I get there, I get to my room, and I remember even on the way there, I reached out trying to make my own way on figuring out who the second person was that was supposed to go with me. It was almost like I was not infatuated, that's not the right word. I was just so focused in on filling that seat. And so I called my brother, and I'm like, my brother, he'll go all over the place. He's a bachelor, I'm like, maybe it's meant to be my brother. He's going to go to Washington, D.C. And, I reach out to him, and he's like, man, I'd take you up on that in a second, because I've never been to Washington, D.C., but man, those flights are ridiculous. He's like, no, I'm sorry. I can't swing that. And so I'm in my hotel room and I'm looking out, and mind you, I'm in Georgetown at a beautiful, beautiful hotel. You could tell it was where probably government officials have their meetings. It was just to the nines. And I'm in my room alone, looking out the window, and I'm like, man, I wish I could be experiencing this with someone. And my husband, he has certain, like, he can call out at certain times in between his classes and everything, that in the rehab that he's at, was at. And we were on the phone together, and I said, I still don't get it. I said, I asked my brother to come, and he's, Charlie said he couldn't make it. And I said, who was the second luggage tag? And he said, that was mine. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Cyndee, I packed my bags. I packed my suitcase, and I got help. And he said the prophecy was fulfilled. And so it just clicked in that moment. And to hear my husband say what it was, like, here I'm searching to figure out who's going to experience this with me. And he said, you were meant to go alone. And he said, but I was also meant to get help. And so, I knew this was going to be an emotional episode. And so, I was at the hotel, and I'm like, okay, I can let go now. Like, this was meant for me to be here. And I was nervous, guys, because I was thinking, out of 100 people, I'm in a room with like giants, people that are just having huge impact in the marketplace to spread the gospel. And who am I? Who am I? This girl that heard the Lord speak 4 years ago to start a Christian business network in Macomb County. I was literally standing in a room in Washington, D.C., in this conference room, and the executive of Chick-fil-A and executive at Coca-Cola Consolidated and United in Purpose, founder, just amazing people. The president of the United States Christian Chamber of Commerce is there. And I always thought, how am I worthy to get this invitation? And I think a lot of us, maybe listeners, you feel that you're not worthy, you're not good enough. Maybe even you've turned down opportunities because you told yourself you weren't good enough. And I'm just a voice that the Lord, I pray uses to tell you are good enough. And that who are you to tell the Creator that you don't deserve a seat at the table? And so I was very nervous. Usually not for me. I'm an extrovert, and I own a networking company, so I can just fit in, anywhere and talk to people, love talking to people. But I struggled to get over the fact that these people are giants, right? And they probably have more experience than I do. But along the way, it was just kind of beautiful learning how each of us had gifts. Like, we would go to switch up tables that we would sit at and get to meet all kinds of people from across the country. And one gentleman in particular stood out to me, who was a blessing and an answer to prayer. His name is Mark Whitaker. He is an executive with Coca-Cola Consolidated. And mind you, I didn't know that Coca-Cola has two separate companies. One is the Consolidated for Coca-Cola is like the bottling company. So like when you go to the grocery store and you get a Coke, that's Coca-Cola Consolidated. Great faith-based, they put chaplains in all their distribution centers. They developed a program called T Factor that they use across their organization to help other businesses be able to incorporate what they do to pour into people, love people like Jesus. Yeah, just amazing. And so I meet Mark Whitaker, which has got the biggest Southern drawl, a gentleman from North Carolina. And it's just the sweetest guy and genuinely listens well, and is curious about what other people are doing, to do kingdom building across the country. And when I met him, he's, I wasn't thinking anything of it. And people kept saying, have you heard Mark's story? Have you heard his testimony? And I'm like, what? No, I'd love to. And they're like, no, go look it up. I'm like, no, just tell me. And they're like, no, he'll probably talk about it. Mind you, I don't think Mark ended up diving into it. He talked about T Factor and everything. But anyways, I go back to my room after the first evening that we were all together. And I look up Mark Whitaker. And I'm like, what? There's no way that Google is telling the truth here. And it says, he was the storyline behind the movie The Informant with Matt Damon. I'm like, I saw that movie. That guy was like a whistleblower. He went to prison for like 8.5 years. I'm like, not this guy. This guy was a Southern gentleman, like just sweet as pie, like would never see that. And so I go back the next day and Mark's, I was like, oh my goodness. And he's like, yeah, Jesus can transform anybody, especially, when you're in prison, right? And so he ends up telling me telling the group about an organization called Radical Mentoring. And I had been praying over this, Unite the Uniters event. So mind you, this was an answer to prayer. I was like, Lord, what are you doing? Where do you want me to use my gifts? What am I? There's something important that's going to come out of this, because you don't invite me to a room of 100 people if there's not some plan involved, and I want to know the blueprint. So he says, yeah, this, shares about the program. And I said, well, I have a group called The Forge. It's like the movie. We've been together for a couple years now, where we read a book together. We come back together, go over what we read and what stood out. It's kind of like discipleship, pretty much, at its core. And there's maybe 6 to 8 of us. And he's just grinning from ear to ear as I'm telling him this. And I said, I'd really like to expand this in Michigan, and, even in my county, like just start small. But it's been so fruitful for the people, for us that have been in this group, because we can really get into nitty gritty stuff, and we trust one another, and we take it to the Lord. And, it's just just been a profound discipleship experience for our group. And he said, you know what, Cyndee, that's exactly what radical mentoring is all about. And no, my Southern drawl, that was probably a terrible impression of Mark. But he's like, yeah, that's it. We read a book. We've got men's groups, women's groups. We really try and cap it between 6 to 8 people so that there can be some real deep, raw discussion there. And he's like, yeah, we got, it doesn't cost anything to be a part of it. And I was just like, no way. I if it wasn't for Unite the Uniters, I wouldn't have known that existed. And so I says, how can I bring that to Michigan? He's like, let's work together. I'd be happy to help you with it. And so we've had a virtual meeting since, and he's shared the contact information of the founder to see about getting it launched off here. But it was a God wink moment, because this Forge, I knew God was doing something with the Forge, but I didn't know that someone had already created and kit and caboodled the thing, right? So that you could easily expand into more and more small groups. So that was a blessing. And the second one that really stood out was meeting Crystal Parker. I didn't know how much this would evolve until I think God had to work on my heart a little bit. Crystal and her team, she had about at least a handful of presidents of different states, Christian Chamber of Commerce. And Crystal launched the United States Christian Chamber of Commerce back about 4 years ago, around the same time that I started my Christian business network here locally in Michigan. And I got the opportunity to get to know our team and hear what they're doing. Mina, I think, was one of them that were there. Randy, who's the president of the Michigan Christian Chamber of Commerce here. Isn't it crazy that you meet the president of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. for the first time? But it was great hearing what their heart is in kingdom expansion in the marketplace. And I also, which led out of that, ended up running into Crystal again in Cincinnati when I went to the Faith and Work conference this past summer, about a month or two ago. And lo and behold, Mark Whitaker was there too. So I knew, those moments where God's like, wink again. Like he can't wink enough at you to tell you the stars have aligned and he's telling you the blueprint. And Mark, or Radical Mentoring, that organization is part of the blueprint. And the Christian Chamber of Commerce is part of the blueprint. So, yeah, a lot of different pieces that have evolved these past few months, highs and lows, right, as we go through them. But just to see God's hand in all of it, it just awes me. And, my heart cries for the people out there that haven't yet seen God's handiwork. And sometimes I think that he's showing us, but we're too busy to see it. Or maybe it's not time for you to see the full blueprint, right? He's asking you to step out in faith and be obedient. But it's so cool to kind of reflect back and see God's hand this whole entire time in my marriage with my husband, being obedient to doing an intervention, and no longer enabling. That wasn't easy, you guys. Like that was heart-wrenching for me. And also managing 2 teenage boys' emotions through it, right? Like, it was a lot, going through that. And then, but God's saying, trudge for, I don't know if I'm using the right word, continue to walk in what I've given you. And that was an invitation to Washington, D.C. It's incredible. You know what? There's one more God wink too that just came to mind. I know it's out of the timeline, but when I was about feeling like the day that I was like, I'm going to have to do this intervention. I have to act now, right? I didn't want to go to Washington, D.C. There were so many things that went through my head. I'm like, I want my husband there, but what if he's drinking? Is that, and then what if people judge me based on him drinking? I don't know. There was just so many different things that went through my head. So I knew that I was like, I have to do something. I have to take action. So that particular week of the intervention, I kid you not, this rarely happens, but all of the groups through my Christian Business Network, 3 of them were meeting that week. It was how the weeks landed weird. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm leading 3 groups and I am an emotional wreck, right? Like I got to keep my composure, not show it, and lead these groups. Well, one particular group that met was New Baltimore. Sorry, indigestion. It's got to happen now. I keep on swallowing. Anyways, I had a 1-to-1 scheduled with a good friend, Carol Ward. And the reason for the 1-to-1, we were going to get together for lunch and go through planning for an event she had coming up for Forward. Wonderful organization, by the way, just to plug real quick, a women's organization, Christian Women in Business. They have a Detroit chapter, Metro Detroit chapter. Check it out, ladies. You definitely want to get plugged in. been a part of that organization, and it has really encouraged me in my faith, and especially in business. Anyways, going back to it, she's like, I have an event, Cyndee. I could really use your consulting on it, on how to ensure the event's successful, getting people, making people aware of the event. I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. So she's like, I'll pay you to do a consultation with me. Let's have lunch. Now, me and Carol Ward go way back. Even she's shared her story with me, and I knew that she had a son that struggled with addiction. And we've talked about Celebrate Recovery and all those different organizations that have helped us as resources. And so we get together, and she asked the first question, what's new? How are you doing? And guys, I had been stuffing it down because leading groups, right? And I just broke. I was just like, I think I'm going to have to do an intervention. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, who better to be having lunch with than Carol Ward? And she goes, what? And she's like, oh my gosh. And she says, you know what? No, we're not focusing on forward for this lunch date. And she's like, I'm going to help you prepare for this. And she blesses me and ends up paying for a consultation with an organization that helped me with watch outs and what language to use. And I'll put in the show notes. I'll have to look up the name of the organization since I don't have it top of mind. But that organization, it was like a 1-hour consultation, and it was just every bit that I needed and that the Lord knew I needed to just keep it together and be able to have an intervention using words of love, with my husband. And so, Carol, if you ever listen to this episode, thank you so much for financially investing into me in that moment, and just putting me first and supporting me through that, because that's something that I will never forget, and I will pay it forward for those that go through the challenges of doing an intervention. But guys, just that God wink alone, I just had to share it, is God knows what you're going through. He knows what you need. He knows that you're going to act in obedience, and he gives you the people and the resources that you need to take action, because he doesn't lead us down a road to feel alone, where he knows we need it. He supplies it. And even financially, you guys, through this, I mean, Spencer's the breadwinner of our family. And so I was like, anyone else would be like, you're crazy. Like, what are you going to do financially for your family? And boy, did the Lord show me how powerful he is, because everything was fine for us financially. I'll tell you this. Financially, everyone listening knows that tax season, sometimes that check is taking forever to come in, right? So you're expecting a tax return. We've had times where we've waited like almost 6 months. I think it was last year. We waited 6 months to get our tax return refund money. I kid you not. Spencer submitted our taxes. And mind you, that was another nerve-wracking thing, because I'm like, I don't know how to do taxes, and he's got to submit these taxes because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, we have all these businesses that, he always does the taxes. So anyways, he submits the taxes, and I do the intervention the next day after he's shared that he's submitted them. And he's like, hey, there's no promise that money's going to be coming in anytime soon. So here's some money to help get us through while I'm there. So thank goodness he is good with his money, invest in things, and helped us through that. But we didn't actually end up needing it. The government, within days, I think it was days, like I want to say like 5 days, we get not only the state, but federal tax money back. And then we got some other money back random. I can't remember what it was, but I told my husband, I don't think we've ever had this much money in our checking account. He goes, no joke. He's like, man, is the Lord good? Like, that's insane that all this money came in. And I had nothing to worry about. Now, mind you, people, I wasn't sitting back and not doing anything. Like, I was still going out and making money, bringing money in. But it's the whole essence of how good the Lord is, and how he provides and knows what we need. There were times where I'm like, oh, should I go and work? And I'm like, no, I'm going to honor the Sabbath. Or like there was testing times of you could go out and work, or you could be with your kids in the evening. And I'm like, I'm going to be with my kids in the evening. So there were testing times where God's like, you're okay, but there's something in us that's like, no, I gotta bring stuff to the table. And God's like, no, you don't. I've got you covered. So, oh man, I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, you guys, but I could not help but say, you know what? I'm getting on this mic today and I am going to share how good of a God we serve. If anyone listening can relate with pieces of this, maybe you have someone that's going through addiction and you're at your wit's end and you need to do something and you hear the whisper of the Lord to do something. Let this podcast episode be your encouragement to take action and reach out to me. I would love to share the resources. I can't forget to share this. The beautiful side of all of this is my husband just celebrated 90 days sober. He got his 90-day coin, and he's leading our family spiritually. He makes his bed like he came out of a military boot camp every morning. He leads us into church. He's just a different. I had prayed the one prayer that I'd always prayed, and I told him this was that the Lord would transform him spiritually, because without that, you can't overcome addiction by your own might. And he truly, he's come back. He goes to meetings every day. And he's just, even reading the word every day, he wakes up and that's the first thing he does in the morning. And we have these in-depth God talks now. I'm just so thankful that even though in the beginning it was like, don't make me do this, Lord, don't make me do this intervention, I'm so glad that I did it, that I obeyed what he said to do. And so if any of you, if you feel hopeless, and maybe your loved one or your friend or whoever it may be, maybe they've been fighting for a long time, you'd be surprised at how God uses other people's obedience and prayers to transform the person that is going through addiction. Spencer and I were talking about the other day how there was I think his mom sent him a Jensen Franklin sermon, and he talked about, Jensen Franklin was talking about how our prayers, they keep, think of them filling up like a canister or a vessel, right? And the more prayers that go in, eventually it overflows, and the prayers are answered of the people. And I said, I just felt like, wow, Spencer, your vessel was overflowing with prayers, and you're an answer to prayer of just overcoming and reconnecting to the Lord in such a deep way. Just incredible. And to the point where he goes to church now and he's like, oh my gosh, that sermon seems so short. And I'm like, wow, who is this man sitting next to me? Because before it was kind of like, is it over yet? Because he didn't have that in-depth connection. And now he's like, man, it went so quick, and he takes notes, and he asks the boys after church, like, hey, what did you get out of the message today? And to see how the boys react to his leadership has been very awesome, because the first time they were like, I don't know what he talked about in the sermon. And then and Spencer shared, well, this is what I got out of it. And then they kind of conversed with him as he shared what he got out of it. And then the next Sunday, he did the same thing. And they knew, they were like, oh, this is what I got out of it. So my husband's like leading our household spiritually. It's like, God's like, listen, I'm going to 10X your prayer, answer your prayer 10X style. So if you or someone you know is dealing with addiction, please, we have a series that I said at the beginning, of resources in our show notes. You'll see plenty of resources. You can reach out to me. But yes, so I can't believe I've been talking by myself for 44 minutes, you guys. But I'm going to go ahead and close things out, in a prayer. So if you can bow your heads wherever you're at, close your eyes and just, Lord, I thank you for always pursuing us. Lord, never giving up on us. Lord, you're just so good. You hear every single prayer that we have. You've captured every tear I've ever had, even these listeners. It's so good to know that we can cast our heavy burdens on you and our questions and our doubts and our fears. And you are here to help us through it. Lord, you send miracles. We call them God winks. And Lord, I thank you. I thank you that you walk alongside of us through our journey. And you never leave us. You say you'll never forsake us. I ask that our listeners, that they would just call upon you, Lord, that they would act in obedience to that still small voice when you tell them to do something, Lord. I cast out all fear that comes into mind whenever you're calling them to do something, because fear is always going to try and hedge in. God, but I thank you so much for what you're doing. And I ask that if any bit of this message impacts the people that are listening, Lord, even that one person, that it was all worth it, Lord, that you've called us to be a voice and you've called us to share our testimonies and share of the amazing works that you're doing, Father. I just praise you, Lord. I praise you for what you're doing, what you're going to do for even the people that are listening, Lord God. We ask that you continue to work in each one of our hearts, to draw us towards you, to push back the distractions, Lord, to make you the center of our lives. We ask all of this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Well, thank you, Godwink listeners, for listening into today's episode, listening to me pour out my heart. If you have a Godwink story that you want to get out there to encourage others, we would love to hear it. If you visit our show notes or go to thegodwinkpodcast.com, you can share your story there, and a person from our team would be happy to reach out to you to get you connected to the Godwink podcast. Other than that, guys, as I always say, be blessed. Take care. I want to give a big thank you to Office Evolution Troy for providing their podcast studio for us this afternoon to record. If you have any questions or you would like to book your own time in their podcast studio, give them a call at 586-788-9966. If today's Godwink story really hit home with you, we would love to hear about it through the Godwink community on Facebook. If you know of someone that needs to hear today's Godwink story, show them some love and tag them on the Godwink podcast. You never know how a Godwink story might change their day around for the better. If you or someone you know has a Godwink story that the world needs to hear, we want to hear it. Simply click the link within the podcast notes to send in your Godwink story. Until next time, remember, God's got you. Wink, wink.